China is destroying the planet. Its destruction literally reaches new lows and goes to new heights. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. For years, people have been saying that the world needs to cooperate with China to combat climate change due to its role as the largest emitter of greenhouse gases, which is like saying we need to cooperate with an arsonist to prevent forest fires. Maybe cooperate isn't the right word, guys. For example, U.S. Special Climate Envoy John Kerry says we need China. And U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm says the U.S. can learn from what China is doing on climate change. The Chinese Communist Party loves it when American elites say things like that. China's leader Xi Jinping has claimed he will prioritize the environment, protect nature, and promote green lifestyles. For years, people kept saying the Chinese Communist Party surely cares about combating climate change because it's in their interests. Then again, not lying about COVID or letting it spread across the globe should have been in their interests too, so there's that. In reality, the Chinese Communist Party's rhetoric doesn't match up with their actions. They've always been prioritizing manufacturing and economic growth. And when it comes to the environment, they don't care about places that aren't China. Heck, the CCP doesn't care about places that are China. If you don't love yourself, how can you ever learn to love someone else? I've mentioned in previous episodes how China continues to make air quality worse by pumping out even more carbon emissions despite pledges not to, and how China devastates the world with its dams, fishing fleets, deforestation, rare earth mining in places like Mongolia and the DR Congo, and cheap knockoffs. I ordered Chuck Taylors and they're polluting my feet with Tuck Chailers. If you want to learn more about these specific points, I'll leave a link below to an episode about that. And yet, those things are far from the only ways the Chinese Communist Party is destroying the planet. Here's a bunch more. Let's start with number 5, the loss of biodiversity. In just 40 years, China has lost half of its land vertebrates. Some of the biggest victims are, of course, the Muslim Uyghurs. As far as non-humans go, amphibians and reptiles are dying off fast. That's partly due to excessive hunting for traditional medicines. People in China love to buy exotic animals for traditional medicine, prestige, and investment. Ah yes, because nothing says prestige like eating turtles. This might be the one instance where eating at Taco Bell is actually the classier option. This has encouraged large-scale illegal poaching, not just within China, but all over the world. For example, in Mexico, networks of Chinese traffickers and Mexican middlemen are poaching the totoaba fish, an endangered species off the Baja Peninsula. These get sent back to China, and in the process, another endangered species called the vaquita porpoise gets trapped. So they're wiping out one species for their supposed benefit, while at the same time wiping out another species for the love of the game? And people wonder why I think the CCP is cartoonishly evil. They're literally Captain Planet villains at this point. Other species around the world are also in danger because of China, including polar bears, not only because of high demand for their fur, but also because of China's effect on the Arctic. Which brings me to number 4. China is making the Arctic more toxic. Obviously, increasing carbon emissions is playing a huge role in shrinking the ice caps. But the Arctic is getting more toxic too. A recent study found that a majority of lead pollution in Alaska and the Arctic can be traced back to China's industrial emissions. Chinese coal burning and non-ferrous metal smelting account for up to 64% of lead deposited in Alaska's Denali National Park and in the Arctic, and up to 73% in Greenland. China also wants to mine the Arctic. If China has its way, then things will get a lot worse for the polar bears, which will make everyone sad. Except seals, I guess. And then there's number 3. China could wreck the deep sea. China has its eyes on the deep sea. The deep sea is a vibrant ecosystem, virtually untouched by humans, and it's full of rich mineral deposits. Did someone say rich mineral deposits? China wants in on that, which is why it's leading the race to exploit deep sea resources. As part of the International Seabed Authority, a UN body based in Jamaica, China has been using its influence to oppose bans on deep seabed mining. It's taken more contracts than any other country to explore and exploit an area more than 6 times the size of Taiwan. Because Taiwan is the official unit of measurement for everything China wants to take over and exploit. China's deep sea gold rush is set to cause an environmental catastrophe. But the deep sea isn't the final frontier that's going to get wrecked by China. Just look to the sky and back on Earth. Because number 2, China is polluting the Earth with rockets. For decades, China has been reckless with its rocket launches from the middle of the country instead of from their shoreline. You know how dangerous it is when rednecks shoot off guns in the air because the bullets have to eventually come down? Well, these red communists are essentially doing that with missiles. Not only is this destroying homes and killing people, but these crashes also leave behind toxic fumes that can get into the water supply. Even schools aren't safe from rocket crashes. And this isn't limited to just mainland China. Other countries as far as Africa have to worry about China's falling debris as well. To make matters worse, China doesn't even share specific trajectory information to reduce risk. Of course, sometimes debris doesn't crash down to Earth, it stays in space. Which brings me to number 1, China is creating space debris. China's space debris poses a huge threat to other satellites orbiting the planet. They've gotten so bored with polluting the planet, they're now polluting the sky. That's even too far for Captain Planet villains. There's even a risk that China will purposefully create space debris with anti-satellite missiles. And the effects of those can last for years and make it harder for any country to get into space. Without China's putting the Earth at even more risk, I wouldn't trust the Communist Party with being good stewards of the moon, no matter how much we cooperate with them, because the moon is the size of 1,000,000 Taiwans. And now, as a thank you to all my wonderful fans who support China Uncensored through the crowdfunding website Patreon or the exclusive social media platform Locals, I'll answer one of your questions. This message comes from Donald St. George on Patreon. Hey Chris, have you seen WeChat's latest terms of service? It pretty well states that they have the rights to all the information you post now and forever. Is this even legal in North America? Well, that's another thing China's polluting, social media. It's not illegal for WeChat to keep your data. Facebook keeps your data too, and Facebook is an American company. But WeChat is even worse. Not only does it collect what you post, but it can also track your location at any time, access your contacts, and even activate your camera and microphone. And WeChat will directly share all this data with the Chinese government. You know, the government that locks up dissidents and kills them for their organs? So my advice is, don't use WeChat. Ever. WeChat is so dangerous, I did an entire episode on it back in 2017. The link is below. Thanks for your question, Don, and thank you to everyone else who supports China Uncensored through Patreon. Join us on Patreon and get some cool perks, including me answering your questions on the show. Check out patreon.com/China Uncensored to learn more. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.